right, everybody. Adequate notice of this meeting, as required by the Open Public Meetings Act, was provided through the posting, mailing, and filing of the annual notice of regularly scheduled meetings of the Town Council on December 13th, 2022. The notice was, on that date, posted on the bulletin board at the municipal building, provided to the Westfield Leader and the Star Ledger, and filed with the clerk of the Town of Westfield. Ms. Lush, may I have a roll call?
Mayor Brindle?
Here.
Council members Hapgood?
Here.
Parmalee?
Here.
LaGrippo?
Here.
Katz?
Here.
Mackey?
Here.
Contract?
Here.
Dardia?
Here.
Root?
Here.
Please rise for the invocation, which will be given by Councilman Katz, and remain standing for the salute.
We meet to serve our community, to use all our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, and to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognize our responsibility to the past and the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, we seek support on our deliberations and our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we're actually going to begin tonight with two proclamations, and we're going to begin with recognizing Mental Health Awareness Month. So if I could ask the members of the Mental Health Council to come up, and I'm going to ask Councilwoman Emily Root, the liaison to the Mental Health Council, to join me. Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for being here. Actually, you know what? I'm first going to introduce Liz Jeffrey. Liz is my liaison to the Mental Health Council, and Emily Root, there you are. Council Emily Root is the council liaison. Incredibly proud this council was one of the new councils that this town council created back in 2019, 18. And you know, like anytime you form something new, it takes a little while to gain some traction. And I think this year, in spite of a little bit of a rainy day, I think the mental health walk and the mental health fair with so many vendors, and that was featured on the news, was really a turning point, I think, for the work of this group. So I'm going to let you introduce everybody, and then I'm going to read, or they can introduce themselves, and then I'm going to read this proclamation. So, here you go, Liz.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you. Thank you, Mayor. We have a few members of the Mental Health Council here with us tonight, but we are many in spirit, especially after the event we had last week. We have Councilwoman Emily Root helping us pretty much on a weekly and monthly basis, and we have Bonnie Guerin here from the YMCA who partners with us for the event we held last Sunday for National Mental Health Awareness Month, and Marla, you want your last name? Marla Inskin, who's here, and Dominique Trott, who headed up our council committee for the fair, the mental health fair that was held in the Wide Barrow branch, and Ann Ormsby, who also was a co-chair with that group that was responsible for the fair, and then we had Tom Fowler and a larger group that were responsible for the Walk for Cape, which is held just prior to the fair in Minnewaska Park. So,
with that, I'm going to read this proclamation. We'll do little photos. Okay. Whereas mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also affects how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. And whereas mental health allows us to maintain relationships, take care of ourselves and our families, take care of our physical bodies, and respond and adapt to daily life changes. And whereas mental health awareness is critical to the well-being of our families, communities, schools, and businesses. And whereas the stigma associated with mental illness is identified as the primary reason individuals fail to seek the help they need to recover from the disease. And talking about mental health openly can reduce stigma and increase willingness to seek assistance. And whereas, with early and effective treatment, those individuals with mental health conditions can recover and lead full, productive lives. And whereas, local resources are available to treat the disease of mental illness, so no resident needs to suffer alone or feel hopeless. And whereas, promoting mental wellness and enhancing awareness of available resources is critical to building a strong and healthy community. And whereas, each business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizen share the burden of mental health problems and have a responsibility to promote mental wellness and support prevention efforts. And whereas ordinance number 2174 established the Westfield Mental Health Council for the town of Westfield to promote the mental health and welfare of all residents. Now therefore I, Michelle Brindle, do hereby proclaim May of 2023 as Mental Health Awareness Month in the town of Westfield. And I call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses and schools in the town to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health, the steps our citizens can take to protect their mental health, and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental health conditions. And I think it's never been more important than it is now. We see a mental health crisis, particularly among our youth. So the work you guys do is so, so important. And let's give a round of applause for all the work that you're doing. Who's our photographer? Yeah, come up here so we get a little bit closer. You ready? Thank you all so much. And we have another proclamation to recognize Better Hearing and Speech Month, and we are honored to have our own very professional speech therapist and private practice, Councilman Emily Root. And this is near and dear to me, as she knows my sister is an audiologist in private practice, so she was thrilled when I sent her we were doing this. So do you want to say a little bit about this and then introduce people?
Yeah, so for years, people around the country have been recognizing Better Speech and Hearing Month. Now it's Better Hearing and Speech Month. Audiologists are coming first, and that's okay. We speech therapists can handle that. But so many of us have family members in speech. We all probably know a speech therapist or audiologist. And during this month, we just want to thank them for all the hard work they're doing. And everyone probably also can know someone who has communication impairments, and these speech therapists and audiologists are who we want to thank this month. And it's an honor for me to be in your graces today. So thank you guys for being here. And come on up, guys. And Mayor Brindle's going to read a proclamation for you.
I was wondering who these new faces were. Oh, fantastic. Okay, Better Hearing and Speech Month. Whereas communication disorders are among the most common conditions in children and adults, affecting tens of millions of people in the United States alone. And whereas, left untreated, these disorders can negatively impact a person's academic, social, and career success, as well as their overall quality of life. And whereas, audiologists and speech-language pathologists are professionals who specialize in the identification and treatment of communication disorders. And whereas, with early treatment, many communication disorders can be reversed or even prevented. However, treatment at any age or any stage can make a positive impact and allow people with communication disorders to lead full and productive lives. Now therefore, I, Shelley Brindle, am pleased to join with the citizens of the town of Westfield in recognizing May of 2023 as Better Hearing and Speech Month, and I salute the many audiologists and speech-language pathologists in our community who dedicate themselves every day to improving the lives of their clients, patients, and students. Let's also recognize the needs of those among us who have hearing, speech, language, and swallowing disorders, and do all that we can to ensure that they have access to the services of audiologists and speech-language pathologists who can help them communicate effectively and swallow safely. Well done. All right.
Trina, down in front. All right. 1, 2. Great.
Thank you all so much. So Jim, I think on to next. Do you have a few updates?
Mayor, really one quick update for tonight. This is more about paving. We'll be making these updates hopefully every single meeting. So we talked about it last meeting, the utility companies have started their paving of leftover roads that were not paved from last year. So we had a whole grid, about 12 roads were just completed. Your area, Mayor, you were in your neck of the woods over there.
I won a lot of friends in my neighborhood the last few weeks, just so you know.
So I do want to say that, again, just a reminder that, the ordinance the town passed, requires utilities to pave these roads. But I also want to say that the utility company is using really a very excellent paving company, Atlantic Infrastructure. We've had great success with them the past few years. They're very responsive to us. They're very responsive when we have issues. So I want to thank Fred Stansfield and his team of people at Atlantic Infrastructure. This first grid they did was very as efficient as possible. They're getting out doing the striping now. And then as we move forward, we'll announce more grids that they're doing. And of course, our road projects are going out to bid this month, and we'll be doing the same thing over the summer and the fall as well. Also, in addition to that, we did have night paving being done by the state of New Jersey for North and South Avenues, which, for those of you who live close to downtown, Mike, not the quietest operation at night, but of course done at nighttime because of the volume of traffic that flows on North and South Avenue, two state highways that run through the town of Westfield. So paving was completed from roughly the traffic circle on South Avenue to the Scotch Plains line, going towards Scotch Plains in Westfield, as well as North Avenue from roughly in front of the firehouse where they finished last year to the Garwood line and beyond. So they're coming back doing some striping that we'll be finishing up in certain areas, but those projects which can be disruptive are now finished. So those are a couple of big things already completed this year. So a lot more paving coming by utilities and by the town. But I also want to thank everyone for their patience as this infrastructure improvements happen, and remind everybody again, if you haven't signed up for Nixle, please sign up for Nixle. We get updates every morning on road closures by the police department, which is great. And again, on the jobs that are being done for town paving, which are on our website. If you have plans to convert to gas from oil, or looking to put a generator in that would cause a cut in the roadway, please contact the engineering office. We want to get that done now before we pave. So we have a 7-year moratorium after paving. We want that to happen. So that's it for tonight's quick update, Mayor.
Great, thank you, Jim. It is a ton of paving that's gone on in Ward 2. It's really quite remarkable. So think about that ordinance that was done. It's been great. I do want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Remind everybody that public comment is only accepted in person, and we're live streaming for viewing only on Facebook. And before we get to tonight's agenda, I would first like to thank and commend Chief Delks and the Westfield Fire Department for their efforts in responding to a recent fire at 412 West Broad Street. Very grateful that no one was injured and that the occupants weren't home, but their house was deemed uninhabitable, and unfortunately their pets, including their 2 dogs, did not survive. There has been a GoFundMe account set up for the McCann family, who were the residents there. It's a name that's familiar to many of us. They're longtime Westfield residents and public servants. So you can find information about the GoFundMe online, and it's on my comments. So please consider helping out this long resident time family. There is some very exciting new businesses in town. If you haven't been there recently, I do want to congratulate Westfield resident Anastasia Harrison on the ribbon cutting. She had a grand opening of her beautiful new space of her architectural and design firm, AHD & Company. Yes. And she has lots of fans here from the Historic Preservation Commission, as she designated her home in Stoneling Park recently. And her place is upstairs at 114 Elm Street, right across from Adams Tavern next to G-Lab, and it's beautiful. And they welcome visitors, so I would suggest everybody go up and say hello. Also newly opened, I went and said hello today to Moki Moly. It's 138 East Broad Street in the, not Brummers, was it? The Omaha Steaks? The old Omaha Steaks place. It serves mochi treats and donuts and Korean hot dogs. And also, if you haven't noticed, there's a new, in the old design hub on the corner of Quimby and Elm, is a new, they're calling Indigo Art Studio Round 2. It's a painting studio for kids and adults. They told me they were packed on Sunday after Spring Fling. And it's already become very popular, and I think definitely during Open Quimby, there's gonna be tons of kids running around. So please stop by and say hello. We also have a ribbon cutting this Saturday for a women's retail shop, Cachet, which is at 112 Central Avenue, which is right across from Starbucks, which looks very exciting. And there's also an opening on Monday of the House of Wine and Liquor at 560 North Avenue. It's in the former TD Bank location. It looks actually great from the outside, and that opens on Monday, which is going to be a great addition. And there's also new openings coming over the next 2 months. The German Donor Kebab, which is in the former Brummer space, Wonder in the former CVS space, and Rumble Boxing in the former Victoria's Secret space. So lots happening downtown. It's very exciting. And speaking of Open Quimby, if you might have noticed, our downtown outdoor summer dining is back. There's lots of parklets, Open Quimby, which is, our popular pedestrian plaza, outdoor dining and retail space, entertainment, and wellness programming. It returned this past weekend. Looks like it's going to be a beautiful week coming up to enjoy it. We're back to the one-way traffic pattern on Quimby, and it will be fully closed to cars on Tuesday nights in July and August during Sweet Sounds, our popular music festival. And there's got a bunch of range of programming options, including Girls' Night Out, which is on Thursday night. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful night from 5 to 9. And I would encourage everybody to come out and enjoy all the festivities and the promotions that are going on in places all over town. And I have Councilor Mackey is going to talk about the Pride flag raising, which is scheduled in June.
Yes, so our annual flag raising for the Pride celebration will be June 7th, Pride flag raising at 6 p.m. on Town Hall lawn, and then we will proceed with the annual walk to Quimby Street, where we expect to have some refreshments and hopefully adding a little bit of music and a little bit more festivities, as has been requested by the students the last couple of years, and we hope everybody will come out. We are reserving Thursday night, June 8th as a rain date.
So June 7th, 6 p.m.
Yes.
Sounds great. And in May is also National Bike Month. We have some great updates for our cyclists in town. Councilman Dardia, as the liaison to the Bicycle Advisory Board, has some information on 2 Bike Oases projects, and Councilman Scott Katz, as the liaison to the Recreation Commission, has all the details on this year's tour to Westfield. So, Councilman Dardia, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. We're looking forward to the upcoming installation of 2 Bike Oases. One will be located in Municipal Lot 1 behind Bovella's, and is a joint effort between the DPW, the Bicycle Advisory Board, and the Green Team, and is funded by a Sustainable Jersey Bike Oasis grant. The second location will be on Elmer Street behind the Rialto as part of a separate grant received by the DWC. The intention of these Bike Oases is to provide amenities for cyclists, including new bike racks, benches, a water bottle filler, and a bike tool repair station to further encourage biking in the downtown. We anticipate work to be completed on these projects in the coming weeks so that the new facilities are ready for the public's enjoyment this summer. And just some general bike safety reminders. It's always good to know as weather is warming up and more people are apt to get out and ride. So always remember to wear a fitted helmet, use hand signals, and ride with the flow of traffic. And please always remember to wear reflective clothing and always add lights to your front and rear of your bike when riding at dawn, dusk, and night. Thank you.
Very nice. Councilman Katz?
Thank you, Mayor. So our resident community biking event, the Tour to Westfield, is back for its 2nd year. Save the date for Sunday, June 11th, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. For activities that include a 2-mile family bike parade led by the Westfield Police Department, Westfield Police Department Bike Rodeo, and the Tour de Tots for younger children on tricycles and scooters. Participants can also vie for a chance to win a $100 gift certificate to a Westfield business by decorating your bike in the Bling Your Bike contest, or compete to win $150 towards an ice cream or pizza party at a local eatery if you're the largest group to register and ride. We will also give away 8 $20 downtown Westfield gift certificates, courtesy of the Downtown Westfield Corporation, to some lucky participants. So this year we're featuring a new activity for our more adventurous bikers called the Tour de Tricks, where children 9 and older can learn how to jump a curb or see a wheelie demonstration up close. Jay's Cycle will also be on hand again to perform safety checks on your bike, Mayor. Last time they performed some
Don't tell
necessary
anybody that.
adjustments to your bike. And entertainment will be provided by the Spinners DJ. Based on our first annual event turnout, we're expecting a great day. Hopefully the weather hopefully we does cooperate and we have a great day. Advanced registration is required, which will be available this week on the town website. And this is thanks to the Recreation Commission and Department for organizing the event in collaboration with the Westfield Police Department, the Bike Advisory Board, thank you, Mike Dardia, the Brakes Coalition, of course, the Green Team, and the Downtown Westfield Corporation. So thank you very much.
Very fun.
It's going to be awesome.
So regarding tonight's agenda, we have a number of legislative items, including many ordinances on second reading. Very excitingly, to historically designate 3 homes in Stoneleigh Park, and Councilman LaGrippo is going to be later giving us some information on those when those ordinances are up for adoption. We also are updating our historic preservation ordinance as part of National Historic Preservation Month. We'll also hear ordinances on second reading related to master plan implementation, all of which were unanimously approved by the planning board last week, as well as those also some addressing stormwater management. But very importantly and lastly, we are introducing an ordinance tonight to approve a bond issuance of $11.8 million for the Edison Fields project. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background and context about that, and then ask for some of my fellow councilmen and Jim to chime in. So if you remember, there was a vote in November by both the town and the Board of Ed approving the shared service agreement for the Edison Fields project. And since then, the town has proceeded with its due diligence to identify, through a very public RFP process, the most appropriate and cost-effective firm for survey and project design work. As you'll hear, I think from Councilman Katz, we had an incredible response to this RFP, as many well-known and qualified firms sought out this project. But I am going to ask Councilman Katz, as liaison to the Recreation Commission, to provide a little bit more details for the public on the steps that we undertook that are getting us to this point tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. As we communicated back in November, the next steps in this process would be the issuance of an RFP for site survey and project design work. The timeline of the process has brought us to this ordinance introduction tonight was as follows. The RFP was issued on January 19th, and we then hosted a non-mandatory site inspection at Edison for interested firms on January 26th. We're pleased to learn on March 8th, the deadline for the RFP, that 11 firms had submitted responses. On March 17th, we formed a review and selection committee to ensure the full range of stakeholder input was involved in the process. The committee members included myself, Councilwoman Habgood as the Finance Policy Committee Chair, Board of Education Business Administrator Patty Ramos, Board of Education Facilities Director Sean MacArthur, Recreation Director Megan Schaefer, Dan Conti, the Assistant Rec Director, Recreation Commission members Russ Howell and Chairwoman Jennifer Gilman, Town Administrator Jim Gilday, Assistant Town Administrator Heather Ray Ferrati, and Dave McAllister, a member of the town's Water Infrastructure Resiliency Committee, or commonly known as WORK. The committee conducted interviews of 7 firms, and based on these interviews at the end of April, we unanimously chose T&M Associates as the best fit for this project to be recommended for a future award of contract based on their clear expertise and relevant experience. It's also worth repeating that, as we previously discussed, the Edison Fields project is the first step of many in a larger process of addressing our fields and facilities town-wide. And while the Edison Fields project is the most expeditious approach to gaining desperately needed additional capacity for our student athletes and town sports leagues, we remain committed to pursuing additional solutions with natural grass fields simultaneously as we look at other sites going forward.
So I'm actually asking Jim, because there's obviously, if you can get up and talk a little bit details about the financing just before we introduce the bond ordinance.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. So again, what's before the council tonight is a first reading of a bond ordinance, the amount of $11.8 million. Much like bond ordinances we do for road projects, and most recently One Westfield Place, we basically, you bond more than you might need to be able to manage variations in projects and so forth as we go forward. So basically, in this case, we want to ensure we have bonded enough money for two main things that we've been talking about for quite a while in the committee and otherwise. One is, talked about getting the most environmentally friendly, not only turf, but infill, whatever the best opportunity is on the marketplace at the time. And two, stormwater management. And this project is now really being focused on, stormwater management is going to be a big, probably the largest component of the project. And not only do we want to do that, but now we know that there's new regulations coming out from the state that are going to increase the restrictions and the onerous, or not onerous, but regulations on what they have to comply with for DEP standards, which may obviously tweak the concept designs we've been looking at. So we're aware of that. We want to make sure money's in the ordinance to actually pay for those things, which may cost extra money when we design those. Other thing here is $11.8 million is more than we've been talking about. It's more money that's in there, of course, to make sure that we have money for variations. But we also want to make sure this is a partnership we have with the Board of Education. Doing this bond ordinance up front, make sure the Board of Education members and the board knows that we have a commitment to this project, getting this project done. And part of what's included in this bond ordinance is the cost for T&M and Associates, which Councilman Cash just mentioned, for them to do their design, survey, geotechnical work, and ultimately construction management of this project. So as we discussed previously, a significant portion of the debt service for this project is actually scheduled to be offset by the Westfield Crossing pilot money. We've said that from the very beginning at our meetings at Edison School. It happens to be now, because where we are in the process, lining up to actually work very well starting next year. While the bond ordinance is introduced tonight, no debt service hits the budget for 2023. Any debt service will hit in 2024, and that's the first year we expect to begin to get pilot money from Westfield Crossing to help us offset a portion of the debt service next year and every year thereafter. The debt service for, the money from Westfield Crossing is expected to be over $20 million over 30 years. This project, obviously, if it was to be the full cost that we're bonding, is 11.8. Obviously, we don't expect it to be the full cost, but we have plenty of money from the Westfield Crossing project to offset those costs. So $11.8 million anticipates including things like the turf, drainage, lighting, bathrooms, landscaping, amenities, as well as the design, engineering, construction management we talked about for this whole project. So one other thing to mention, that 11.8 is what's being authorized tonight. Nothing's being bonded tonight. It's merely authorization to begin to spend that money. And basically, we will hopefully, we plan on seeking grants, also donations for this project. We've talked about very early on in the process. So those may end up reducing the cost of this project. And again, we're very happy to be partnering with T&M, which I think is going to be a great partner with us going forward with their engineering expertise and expertise on projects just like this they've done very recently. So unless there's any questions, Mayor, that's some quick overview.
Yep, thank you, Jim. And I just wanted to say, and a reminder, any unused bonding funds will be repealed and not bonded, and can be redirected to future uses, such as supporting the concurrent grass field initiatives that we talked about. But to that point, in addition to the pilot money, the $20 million that Jim had referenced, we had also gotten a commitment from the developer to contribute $300,000 to the Park Improvement Fund once the CO was issued of the project. So tonight, we're also committing to dedicating the $300,000 of Westfield Crossing developer contribution to the Park Improvement Fund to a grass field plan that will include the simultaneous assessment and implementation of designated grass playing fields and all that would require to ensure they remain safe and maintained, well-maintained for our sports teams. And I have to give a shout out and a thanks to Councilman David Contract. I think his insistence and advocacy and persistence on this project has been well documented, particularly for grass playing fields. And so we are here, want to publicly ensure the council's commitment with at least a $300,000 contribution to get that plan started simultaneously, so that we can bring them into fruition in conjunction with the Edison Schoolfield project. That, I think, is a really, truly win-win and the ideal outcome for everybody. And we've always wanted grass fields, but needed the turf to be able to give them an opportunity to rest. And ideally, you know, by the end of next year, we will have turf and grass fields to enable us to maximize the playing capacity for all of our kids. So grateful for David's commitment and support on that, and to this council for their support on that well too. And just before we move on, I know there's been a lot of college graduates this month. I just had 2 kids graduate myself. I just want to say, in attending my daughter's college graduations over the last 2 weeks, I was reminded how grateful I am for the incredible education that our students receive from the Westfield Public Schools. And I think whether it's high school or college, if anyone's had a kid go through our public schools, I know my girls have always said they didn't realize how well prepared they were for college until they got there. And my past 2 weekends was a reminder of that. And I just want to make sure, in light of the recent, and thank the community for supporting the recent school budget. And again, my past 2 weeks was a reminder of how important that is, that we continue to provide the incredible education to our students. So congrats to the graduates, and very importantly to their families on this milestone. So with that, I think we can get on to the work at hand. Ms. Washi, are there any advertised hearings?
Yes, Mayor, we have 11 advertised hearings tonight, starting with General Ordinance number 2023-12, an ordinance by the Town Council amending the Town Code of the Town of Westfield to repeal and replace Chapter 8, Article 4, Stormwater Control and Floodplain, to adopt flood hazard maps, and to designate a floodplain administrator. Anyone wishing to be heard on General Ordinance number 2023-12, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jerome Fader, 789 Lowood Terrace. I guess my concern, Westfield's had some very significant flooding problems, and I guess a while back we formed the Flood Infrastructure Committee. I'm kind of concerned that if a proposal to revoke and replace a large portion of the town code related to flood protection, I'm concerned that there not be any compromise in flood protection. In fact, it seems like the direction ought to be towards having stronger flood protection as we go forward. I guess the other thing, the motivation and details of the changes relative to the old folk are, at least to me, are not well understood. As far as I know, there's been no published analysis of the new flood rules relative to the old ones, so I would appreciate knowing and being able to satisfy myself that we're not weakening our Westfield flood protection. Thank you.
Jim, do you want to address that?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Fader. So a couple things about this ordinance, and we discussed this last meeting when it was introduced as well. So every community in the state of New Jersey is being asked to update their stormwater ordinance to come in compliance with the new model state ordinance. Lots of reasons for that, but very simply said, this ordinance actually makes stormwater management, the town's ability to enforce stormwater management, more restrictive for private properties, public properties, and also one of the big things our engineer indicated was when we have applications before our boards, Planning Board or Board of Adjustment, and stormwater management plans are put forth, the only, I guess, flood maps they're able to refer to or regulations are from 2006, and that's the most recent ones. This now changes that. We will now be able to refer to ones more recently, 2016, not obviously very recent for us, but still better than 2006, and the town gets to choose between 2 different types of mapping that will be whichever is the more restrictive for that particular property. So this actually provides much more opportunity for the town to regulate stormwater management on private and public properties, and the state's requiring every community to do it. As we said last time we were here, luckily, comparatively speaking, big picture, obviously we're not a coastal community, so we don't have the type of flooding coastal communities get, but yet this ordinance addresses what they call riverine flooding, which Westfield does get, where we have small rivers that can overflow. So again, I think this makes our ordinance stronger, but I will say last time we did mention this on the introduction, while this is required and we're going to be sending this finalized ordinance down to the state and DEP for review, this ordinance did have DEP and FEMA review before it got introduced to this council. We are still going to go through separately through the Code Review and Town Property Committee, Council and Parliament's Committee, to look at other things we can do beyond this ordinance to make it more specific to Westfield needs. going forward. So this is really what I'll call step one of a two-step process the rest of the year, so.
Thank you.
Jason, should we clarify, this is not in response to any new stormwater rules the state is going to?
No, good point. No, that's a fair point. So as Councilman Conjure, this ordinance is not in response to the new stormwater regulations that are going to be forthcoming from the state very shortly. This is in response to the state who did an audit of their own stormwater information and ordinances and found they were not in compliance with some normal standards. So then they're asking every community to bring up their own ordinances to stand. A lot of our ordinances are already there. We were kind of ahead of the curve on some parts of it, but some parts had to be updated. So that's what this is in reference to. Okay.
Thank you.
Seeing no further comments, Mayor, you may close the hearing.
This hearing is closed.
Next is for general ordinance number 2023-13, an ordinance establishing a historic preservation commission and providing for the designation and preservation of historic districts and historic landmarks in the town of Westfield. Anyone wishing to be heard on general ordinance number 2023-13, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one, Mayor, you may close the hearing.
This hearing is closed.
Next is for general ordinance number 2023-14, an ordinance designating 3 Stoneleigh Park shown on the town of Westfield tax map as block 4207, lot 20, as a historic landmark and modifying the zoning map. Anyone wishing to be heard on general ordinance number 2023-14, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one, Mayor, you may close the hearing.
This hearing is closed.
Next is for general ordinance number 2023-15, an ordinance designated 5 Stoneleigh Park shown on the town of Westfield tax map as block 4207, lot 18 as a historic landmark and modifying the zoning map. Anyone wishing to be heard on general ordinance number 2023-15, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one, Mayor, you may close the hearing.
This hearing is closed.
Next is for general ordinance number 2023-16, an ordinance designated 18 Stoneleigh Park shown on the town of Westfield tax map as block 4209, lot 7, as a historic landmark and modifying the zoning map. Anyone wishing to be heard on general ordinance number 2023-16, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Katie Spikes, 18 Stoneleigh Park, and
Donald Furr, 18 Stoneleigh Park.
I won't take too much time. This has just been a long time coming. I want to thank Kelly Kessler for starting back in 2016 when we tried to get twice our neighbors to do the whole block and we couldn't and we were brokenhearted. To fast forward now, Maria Boyes, current head of the HPC, for encouraging us to go about it individually, and Anastasia Harrison for getting the ball rolling, moving into Stoneleigh Park, being a new neighbor and taking this on and becoming the first. So now we have 4. We have many more to go, but we're hopeful that other neighbors will kick in. And we want to, thank our neighbors who were interested enough to designate. And then what else? Oh, and we did it primarily because I want to be able to come back when I'm older and my kids are older and they'll be able to recognize the street that they grew up on. It's a really special street and it needs to be preserved.
It is.
And thank you all for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I know when we vote on this ordinance, I know Councilman Agrippo is going to read the history of all the houses and certainly want to acknowledge, but thank you, Katie and team. And again, it's a great night for historic preservation, and so grateful to all of you.
Seeing no further comments, Mayor, you may close the hearing.
This hearing is closed.
Next is for general ordinance number 2023-17, an ordinance to amend the land use ordinance of the town of Westfield in regard to the definition of bay window. Anyone wishing to be heard on general ordinance number 2023-17, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no comments, Mayor, you may close the hearing.
This hearing is closed.
Next is for general ordinance number 2023-18, an ordinance to amend the land use ordinance of the town of Westfield in regard to the definition of building eave height. Anyone wishing to be heard on general ordinance number 2023-18, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one, Mayor, you may close the hearing.
This hearing is closed.
Next is for general ordinance number 2023-19, an ordinance to amend the land use ordinance of the town of Westfield in regard to the definition of swimming pool. Anyone wishing to be heard on general ordinance number 2023-19, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no comments, Mayor, you may close the hearing.
This hearing is closed.
Next is for general ordinance number 2023-20, an ordinance to amend the land use ordinance of the town of Westfield in regard to conditional uses. Any motion to be heard on general ordinance number 2023-20, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no comments, Mayor, you may close the hearing.
This hearing is closed.
Next is for general ordinance number 2023-21, an ordinance to amend the land use ordinance of the town of Westfield in regard to retaining walls. Anyone wishing to be heard on general ordinance number 2023-21, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one, Mayor, you may close the hearing.
This hearing is closed.
Next is for general ordinance number 2023-22, an ordinance to amend the land use ordinance of the town of Westfield in regard to building design standards. Anyone wishing to be heard on general ordinance number 2023-22, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one, Mayor, you may close the hearing.
This hearing is closed. Councilman Katz, please move for the adoption of general ordinance number 2023-12.
I'd like to move for the adoption of general ordinance number 2023-12 on second reading. An ordinance by the Town Council amending the Town Code of the Town of Westfield to repeal and replace Chapter 8, Article 4, Stormwater Control and Floodplain, to adopt flood hazard maps, and to designate a floodplain administrator.
May I have a second? Second. Second by Councilman Mackey. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Council members Hapgood,
Yes.
Parmalee,
Yes.
LaGrupo,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Contract,
Yes.
Dardia,
Yes.
Root,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion has carried. Councilman Parmalee, please move for the adoption of code review ordinances.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move first for the adoption of general ordinance number 2023-13 on second reading, an ordinance establishing a historic preservation commission and providing for the designation and preservation of historic districts and historic landmarks in the town of Westfield.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'll just say once again, I see Chair Maria Boyes, I see Ann Friedman, who's the planning, and I see, is Jenny here tonight? No? Any other members of the HPC? Oh, Katie, of course.
Kelly.
Kelly. Kelly Kessler back there. Just want to say thank you to all of you for really leading the charge on this. It's a great night. It really is one of probably the most momentous nights for historic preservation in the history of the town, I would venture to guess. So thank you all for your commitment. So please call the roll.
Council members Hapgood,
Yes.
Parmalee,
Yes.
LaGrupo,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Contract,
Yes.
Dardia,
Yes.
Root,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion has carried.
All right, next I'd like to move for the adoption of general ordinance number 2023-14 on second reading, an ordinance designating 3 Stoneleigh Park, shown on the Town of Westfield tax map as Block 4207, Lot 20, as a historic landmark and modifying the zoning map.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Councilman LaGrupo, do you want to read a little bit about 3 Stoneleigh Park?
Yep, 3 Stoneleigh Park, also known as the Piercy Thomas House, was built circa 1907 and is currently owned by Maria Elise Watner. The Georgian Revival House is significant at the local level for both its Georgian Revival architecture and for its inhabitants, Nathan Seth Hammond Piercy and H. Emerson. NHS Piercy was superintendent of chemical works at New York Postgraduate Medical School and Hospital in New York City, and was also an annual member of the trustees of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. A subsequent inhabitant of the home was Emerson Thomas, known as Mr. Westfield, for his civic leadership throughout the second half of the 20th century. He served as a councilman for 2 years, a mayor for 6 years in the 1950s. Mr. Thomas was a founding member of the Westfield Foundation, helped create the United Fund of Westfield, and was an active with the Westfield YMCA Board of Trustees. Mr. Thomas was leader in the acquisition of several properties for public use, including the downtown municipal parking lot, the train station building. As a public official, Mr. Thomas was involved with the construction of Westfield Town Hall and the creation of Westfield Volunteer Rescue Squad. As mayor, Mr. Thomas started a downtown beautification program for planting trees and encouraging a colonial theme. A fountain in the center of the lake in Mindawaskan Park is named the H. Emerson Thomason Foundation, Fountain, I should say. So, very impressive. Did not know he was councilman and a mayor, and pretty cool.
Very cool. So please call the roll.
Councilmembers Hapgood,
Yes.
Parmalee,
Yes.
Agrippa,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Contract,
Yes.
Dardia,
Yes.
Root,
Yes.
Mayor Bindle.
Yes, this motion has carried.
All right, next I'd like to move for adoption of General Ordinance Number 2023-15 on second reading, an ordinance designating 5 Stoneley Park. Shown in the Town of Westfield tax map is Block 4207, Lot 18, as an historic landmark and modifying the zoning map.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Contract. So, Councilman Agrippo, can you tell us about 5 Stoneley
Okay,
Park?
five Stoneley Park, also known as the George Davis Beatty's House, was built circa 1911 and is currently owned by Aaron and Donna Keith. The Spanish Revival style house is significant at the local level for its architecture and for its inhabitant George Davis Beatty's, who lived from 1862 to 1945, who served as general counsel for the Aeolian Company for 30 years. The Aeolian Company was a large musical instrument manufacturing company, which was also responsible for developing Stoneley Park.
Very cool.
I see a gentleman in the back. I don't know, my son's, you connected to this house in any way? I'm connected to it. Oh, okay. All right, cool.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
I'm the great-great-grandson of Nathan Piercy, who's 3 Stoney Park.
oh, very cool.
Married my mother, dad's actually a teacher, daughter.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. Because over the years, you kind of know who's at council meetings, and I recognize them. I knew you were my kid's music teacher, so I figured it had to be connected here somehow.
And can be found at Workshop for the Arts on Elmer Street, right? So, didn't know that about you when we met. Quite a history. So please call the roll.
Councilmembers Hapgood,
Yes.
Parmalee,
Yes.
Agrippa,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Contract,
Yes.
Dardia,
Yes.
Root,
Yes.
Mayor Bindle.
Yes, this motion has carried.
All right, next I'd like to move for the adoption of General Ordinance Number 2023-16 on second reading, an ordinance designating 18 Stoneley Park, shown on the Town of Westfield tax map as Block 4209, Lot 7, as an historic landmark and modifying the zoning map.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Mackey. Okay, Councilman Agrippo, last one.
Last one. Katie and Don, it's been great to see you tonight. Feels like yesterday, sitting in your living room, probably 7, 8 years ago, along with Kelly, after the first designation. So I could tell, how emotional. I knew over the years how passionate you are about this becoming as historic. So 18 Stoneley Park was built circa 1928 and is currently owned by Don Ferrer and Catherine or Katie Spikes. The English Tudor Revival House circa 1928 is an excellent contributing example of the second period of construction in Stoneley Park.
So thank you
Can
all.
I add one comment? So when we celebrated Historic Preservation Month during COVID, we put pictures up. I think it was 2020, obviously.
Yes.
And I put up the picture of Stoneley from like the early 1900s, and you can see all these houses in the picture with a dirt road, very few trees. And it's pretty amazing that was, 100 plus years ago. And so Katie, I just wanted to echo your sentiment about, it survived for 100 years. We obviously want it to survive for the next 100 or more. So thank you guys for doing this.
Sure.
I just wanted to thank very much everybody who's here tonight designating their homes. I'd like to thank Maria Boyes and the Historic Preservation Commission. I was the chairwoman of the code review when we were attempting to bring this ordinance to life. And I think we worked 18 or 19 months before we could get to something that we could all be happy with. And when you have a night like tonight that is really full of good feeling, and we recognize that the work that we did is going to serve the public for decades to come, it's very gratifying, and it was a huge team effort, and I'm just very grateful. The work was hard. The results, not everybody in the public was happy about it. So a night like tonight makes the hard work worthwhile, and pleased to see Councilman LaGrippo giving the history, and I have to ask, because you were not in favor of the ordinance, would you vote differently had you seen what has come out of this, had you known?
Honestly, I probably would vote the same way, because at the time, the ordinance stated 1930, and the concern to this day here from residents is that one day when this council's not here, the possibility still exists, they'll have to go in front of a governing body, and someone could tell someone who owns private property what they could do with your home, and that's a fact. And to this day, I would vote the same way.
I appreciate your honesty. Thank you to everybody who's here tonight. I really appreciate your efforts. I know it wasn't easy.
So, are we on please call the roll?
Yes.
No, please call the roll.
Council members Hapgood,
Yes.
Parmalee,
Yes.
LaGrippo,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
Contract,
Yes.
Dardia,
Yes.
Root,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion has carried. Bravo.
All right, next, I'd like to move for the adoption of General Ordinance Number 2023-17 on second reading, an ordinance to amend the land use ordinance of the town of Westfield in regard to the definition of bay window.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Council members Hapgood,
Yes.
Parmalee,
Yes.
LaGrippo, Katz,
Yes.
Mackey. Yes. Contract,
Yes.
Dardia,
Yes.
Root,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion has carried.
Next up, I'd like to move for the adoption of General Ordinance Number 2023-18 on second reading, an ordinance to amend the land use ordinance of the town of Westfield in regard to the definition of building eave height.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Mackey. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Council members Hapgood,
Yes.
Parmalee,
Yes.
LaGrippo,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Contract,
Yes.
Dardia,
Yes.
Root,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion has carried.
Next up, I'd like to move for the adoption of General Ordinance Number 2023-19 on second reading, an ordinance to amend the land use ordinance of the town of Westfield in regard to the definition of swimming pool.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Root. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Council members Hapgood,
Yes.
Parmalee,
Yes.
LaGrippo,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Contract,
Yes.
Dardia,
Yes.
Root,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion has carried.
Next, I'd like to move for the adoption of General Ordinance Number 2023-20 on second reading, an ordinance to amend the land use ordinance of the town of Westfield in regard to conditional uses.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Dardia. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Council members Hapgood,
Yes.
Parmalee,
Yes.
LaGrippo,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Mackey. Yes. Contract,
Yes.
Dardia,
Yes.
Root,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion has carried.
Next up, I'd like to move for the adoption of General Ordinance Number 2023-21 on second reading, an ordinance to amend the land use ordinance of the town of Westfield in regard to retaining walls.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Katz. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Council members Hapgood,
Yes.
Parmalee,
Yes.
LaGrippo,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Mackey. Contract, Dardia,
Yes.
Root,
Yep.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion has carried.
Okay, and last up, I'd like to move for the adoption of General Ordinance Number 2023-22 on second reading, an ordinance to amend the land use ordinance of the town of Westfield in regard to building design standards.
May I have a second? Second. By Councilman Mackey. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Council members Hapgood,
Yes.
Parmalee,
Yes.
LaGrippo,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Mackey. Yes. Contract,
Yes.
Dardia,
Yes.
Root,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion has carried. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the Town Council Conference and regular meetings of April 25th, 2023? So moved by Councilman Mackey, second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Grippo. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Now it's time for open discussion by citizens. Anyone may come up to the microphone and speak to the council on any subject on which we have jurisdiction. Please state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jerome Fader, 789 Millwoods Terrace, just south of Edison Field. I've want to speak about, concerned about ordinance 2023-3, funding the Edison Field project. The project at this point is poorly and incompletely defined. The costs are unknown. Portions conflict with state and town rules. Studies to evaluate impacts have not been done. And bringing portions into compliance with rules could have very large effects on the cost and feasibility. A previous Catalyst Group study for the town showed that the southern 40-feet portion of the field lies in a New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection riparian zone. Development in a riparian zone is strictly regulated, and so somewhat what is shown in the preliminary conceptual sketches can't be built. Further potentially limiting what can be built is the new DEP inland flood protection rule, which raises the flood hazard area definition by 2 feet. The Catalyst survey also shows that the eastern portion of the field slopes downward by about 8 feet towards residences, and there's no public plan or study of the effects of combining the east and west fields, including flooding. Water overwashing Edison Field is presently discharged into the Robinson Branch, known locally as the creek. As required by law, Westfield has a municipal stormwater management plan. This requires that Westfield ensure the adequacy of culverts and in-stream structures, minimize pollutants, and maintain groundwater discharge. And the Army Corps of Engineers report following Hurricane Ida documented the poor state of the creek with deteriorated or absent channel walls and obstructions interfering with flood flow. And I'm pleased to report Mr. Gildea just gave me the news that we seem to be close to getting some permits to fixing, or at least, well, hopefully getting permits to fix some of the problems with the creek. But it's unclear when this will happen and where the money will come from. Further note, Westfield's handling of stormwater is regulated under a New Jersey, an NJDEP general permit, and also an NJDEP permit. And Westfield has a stormwater control ordinance. So basically, they're statewide and locally, there are a lot of ordinances relating to stormwater. And the permit requirements are extensive and affect the feasibility and cost of any project. The town CME study done recently stated that artificial turf would likely be regarded as impervious cover by the DEP. And Edison Field development conflicts with some of the town goals of impervious surface minimization, pollutant control, runoff filtration, and groundwater recharge for a very large site. Artificial turf can pollute surface rainwater runoff and waters that percolate through to groundwater. We don't yet know the proposed infill material for artificial turf, but these will affect the pollutant levels in Robinson's Creek. Any Edison plans need to comply with DEP rules for maintaining water quality. In summary, the flood, I guess, concerned that I'm concerned that we should not be voting large sums of money for a project that doesn't have a real plan, has unevaluated costs, and runs counter to state and town rules. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Greg Lemberg, 528 Grove Street. Thrilled to hear that we're finally talking about natural grass athletic fields. Unfortunately, anything we do after the Edison project will not offset the damage that the Edison project is going to do in its current state. The Edison project capital cost apparently has jumped by 42% to $11.8 million since CME estimated 8.3 just a few months ago. The flaws in that report were glaring, but I would never have believed that their estimate was that far off. They elected to use unfavorable assumptions for installation and maintenance costs for natural grass fields while using favorable costs for plastic grass. They lowballed the playable hours for grass fields while assuming 50% more hours for plastic grass than is currently used on Sidfay Houlihan. They completely ignored the impact of interest payments on the bond issuance, which is being voted on or discussed tonight. This cost element is especially relevant given the steep rise in rates over the past year and the sudden increase in the project costs. A simple sensitivity analysis considering low, medium, and high assumptions for each alternative would quickly demonstrate the cost per playable hour for plastic grass is not lower than natural grass for most scenarios. Not to mention the fact that the absolute cost of plastic is 2 to 3 times higher than natural grass over 30 years. However, there is no way to calculate the environmental and health costs that come attached to this project. As you have heard many times, plastic creates heat islands and it continually degrades, emitting greenhouse gases, including CO2 and methane, all of which accelerate climate change. The plastic grass and infill contain a laundry list of carcinogens and other toxic chemicals that our kids and the community at large will be exposed to. You've all received letters from medical experts and PhD research scientists describing these dangers. Among those chemicals are PFAS, a class of over 9,000 fluorinated hydrocarbons. These are chemicals which the EPA is finally beginning to regulate in drinking water. They are used as process aids when extruding plastic. Whatever you've been told about PFAS-free plastic grass is surely a myth. Were you provided with an analysis of the material showing the absence of all 9,000 chemicals at relevant detection levels using proven analytical test procedures? It seems unlikely. Why didn't you specify PFAS-free materials in the RFQ for a construction management firm? Some of you based your approval of the project 6 months ago on the belief that the field will be PFAS-free. It will not. The field will require about 500,000 pounds of infill, which fits the definition of microplastic pollution from the moment it's produced. Along with broken blades of plastic grass, it migrates off the field at about 2% annually. That's 10,000 pounds of microplastic pollution, the equivalent of about 500 used tires every year, entering the local environment and contaminating the soil and water. It's already happening at Kaler and Sidfay. We don't need more of it. In 10 years, when the field needs to be replaced, what then? To date, there are no plastic grass recycling facilities in the United States. So even if the material is recyclable, that doesn't translate to will be recycled, does it? So in summary, spending $12 million up front plus another $12 million in uninflated numbers over 30 years for a couple of athletic fields is financially irresponsible, and the numbers are going in the wrong direction. The financial cost pales in comparison to the environmental impact, particularly to climate change and microplastic pollution in the environment. Worst of all, the exposure to the chemicals and microplastics in these fields is like playing Russian roulette with the health of residents, especially students who will play on it. I hope you will vote no on this bond ordinance and instead advocate for improved state-of-the-art natural grass fields everywhere in town so that we preserve what little natural space we have left and that our kids have healthy surfaces to play on. Thank you.
Jean Lindbergh, 528 Grove Street. I agree with everything that my husband said, and I would like to add a couple comments to it. Number one, the idea that there is any type of artificial turf and infill that is environmentally friendly is simply a myth, and I would say a lie on the part of the artificial turf industry. It's greenwashing. It is just impossible. And I urge you to go to the website
beyondplastics.org and educate yourself about plastics. I would do it, but it takes longer than the 5 minutes that I'm allowed at the podium. You should go on it and go from top to bottom, read everything that's on there and educate yourselves, and you will understand why there is no such thing as environmentally friendly or healthy. Artificial turf and the alternative infills are not safe either. The other thing that you should do when you're on beyondplastics.org, or go on YouTube to the Beyond Plastics YouTube channel and watch a webinar by Dr. Philip Landrigan. You did not hear from him. He probably doesn't even know anything about Westfield, New Jersey, but he's a pediatrician and he's an expert on plastics. Watch and listen to his webinar. It's titled Plastics Impact on Human Health. He does the best job of anyone that I have ever heard on explaining why plastic is such a problem. And it's not just the field, it's everywhere. All of you that sit up here, you have wonderful educations. So many of you have pedigrees from Ivy League colleges. We have lawyers. Use that gift that you have to make Westfield a better place. Please don't blanket Edison Field with plastic. You showed tonight a reverence for history, for historical buildings. Please show the same reverence for our natural spaces. Once you rip up the grass at Edison Field, Tamaqua Park, wherever the hell it is, you can't turn it back. That's the problem. This is not something that you do on a whim. It's permanent. As Mr. Fader said, it's an impermeable surface, and it also kills all of the microorganisms that are in the grass. So if it's sometime in the future, a different body of politicians decides to actually listen to the health experts and the scientists and goes to replace the artificial turf, it will be impossible, nearly impossible, to turn it back to what it once was or to make it better. Thank you very much.
Michael Armento, MD, Republican candidate for Ward 2 Town Council, 30 Sandra Circle. I had something prepared, but I just had to make a comment because I was very upset with Councilwoman Mackey. Your statement to Mr. LaGuipa was disgraceful and embarrassing. During a feel-good portion of the meeting, you had to be divisive and try to make a point, a political point. Truly shameful. The reason why I'm here is to comment on several things. It is great to hear that all the new businesses are opening in Westfield. It seems like Westfield, which has been around for over 200 years, seems to be doing well financially. Despite what Mayor Brindle had said, including on TV, that Westfield is not financially viable. I would also like to quote Mayor Brindle from 2018. It is our understanding that these fields, as proposed, wouldn't be ready for play until 2019, spring 2020. Assuming a process without delay and an approval for funding by the council that has not yet happened. The net result of our proposal would be a publicly vetted project with a potentially better outcome and support from the council and a projected potential completion date of fall 2020. In my 2 months in municipal government, I have learned that we often end up settling for a lot of things because it is so hard to get things done. Well, we're not interested in settling, not if we don't have to. And you in turn should hold us accountable for our commitment to you. Mayor Brindle, I am holding you accountable. Please don't use COVID as an excuse. It is now 2023. There are no fields, probably no fields until 2024, 2025, with a cost of several $1 million more than it would have been in 2017-18. You've actually cost Westfield more money with your plan that was so good, according to your quote. Where is your accountability? I am sure you will have a ton of excuses. There are none, and there's no accountability, just as you are doing with One Westfield Place. You are ruining Westfield.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is David Kiefer. I live at 603 Shadowlawn Drive, and I also am a candidate for Town Council for Ward 4. I only had one quick question with respect to the Fields project. I live on the corner of Shadowlawn and Rawway. My driveway empties out into Rawway, and it's oftentimes very hard to get out of that driveway sometimes. So my question was there any sort of traffic impact study done for the Fields project, for the location at Edison? I looked online, I couldn't find any. So I was just curious if there was an impact study, and if there was, were there any mitigation measures that were suggested or recommended? Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Okay, I see none, and so I close this portion of the meeting. Jim, do you want to address some of the comments about, Mr. Federer, I know, got up and talked about the DEP and the stormwater, and can you explain a little bit about what's happening in the DEP and the requirements of this project?
Sure. So this project, the Edison School Fields project, will, as you had mentioned before, require DEP permits and approvals to design whatever ultimately gets designed for that site. And it is true that we had an initial, what they call LOI, letter of intent, I guess it is, basically signifying where the floodplain is, where the riparian zone that Mr. Bader mentions. That is true. It doesn't mean something can't be constructed there. If it is constructed in that area or close to it, regulations have to be complied with. When we met with DEP and Army Corps of Engineers in the field back in March of 2022 to talk about the flume area that is by Mr. Fader's house and others there, residents who were at the meeting did ask DEP specifically on that day about a field to be constructed on the property behind, which is Edison School. The DEP gentleman said specifically that if the DEP approves a project here, you will know that it's actually approved to the highest standards of stormwater management. That state of New Jersey has some of the highest standards in the country for stormwater management. So there will be permits that will be required. There'll be a process, obviously probably many months for approvals for whatever the final design is of this project. But all those will be complied with. And as I mentioned before, we expect to design this to the newest, highest standards for stormwater management that are to be released very shortly in the next coming weeks or months.
And to reiterate, so it will absolutely improve stormwater in the area because by law, it has to.
Correct, and just a side note to that comment, that's correct. And in our interview processes with the firms that Councilman Hapgood and Councilman Katz attended to interview the firms that we were choosing for this project, every one of them indicated that basically no matter what we do over there with this project, it will improve stormwater management because right now there basically is none. The water sheet flow is basically from the field to the flume as it exists today.
And then to address Mr. Lindbergh's comments, he mentioned about the increase in costs from what CME. Can you just talk a little bit about why some of those costs were not included and why?
Sure. CME was doing an analysis strictly on turf versus grass. What is included in this bond ordinance was not included. Some of the items were not included in CME's report, such as the design, survey work, geotechnical work, permitting for DEP, construction management was not included. We added some additional costs for the bathroom facility and associated utility work, which was not included in CME's analysis. And we also, as we mentioned before, we increased the cost for the turf selection, turf installation, and drainage installation because of having more flexibility to do the highest and best products that we actually have out there, and highest and best installation for stormwater management. So those items were not included in CME's analysis, hence the higher cost.
And so CME's costs weren't wrong.
No.
They just, by nature of what we asked them to do, there were certain costs that weren't included in that.
That's correct.
And then can you also, I know he mentioned a 30-year project cost, but it's actually the bond is 15 years, just to be clear.
Yeah, so this bond ordinance, and bond ordinances are based upon the useful life of what you're actually what the project is for. In this case, it's a turf field, and we've seen through the analysis that a turf field Maximum could be 15 years or less. So the bond life here is for 15 years, which is standard for recreation projects. Of course, compared to the pilot proceeds we'll be getting from Westfield Crossing, that's a 30-year pilot, expected to generate $20 million. So again, on a yearly basis, starting next year, we will not have a full debt service need next year for this project. Likely between now and the end of this year, there'll be a lot of the survey, geotechnical, and design work will be done. So next year's cost from a debt service perspective will be very small, because we'll be only borrowing or putting out to notes only the money we spent this year. It's 2025 that we'll likely have the larger cost, and we're gonna stay in notes. Our practice, no matter what we do, to mitigate any impacts on any annual budget, is to stay in notes where you pay interest only for a couple of years and then get a critical mass of dollars together to then go out to the bond market at the proper time. We saw we just did that last year with great success. The bond or the debt service increase will be offset next year by any money we get from Westfield Crossing, and each year thereafter, the Westfield Crossing debt service or Westfield Crossing pilot money increases, and that will go to offset the cost for the debt service for this project. In some cases, some years probably in full, other years a portion.
And lastly, to address Mr. Kiefer regarding the traffic impact study, can you just explain like the road and the traffic and
Sure.
why?
So something that was done last year, there was a parking analysis done by Spiesel after their concept design was done. And again, this facility is being designed to be a practice facility. So the parking needs would be much different than a game facility. Also in their analysis, they included taking out certain days of use, which we agreed to up front. Days of Keller Stadiums in use for large events, whether it be graduation, track meets, etc., football games, and or Edison school events, could be concerts and so forth. So those are all factored in. So the parking requirements are going to be obviously requirements, but not as much as a game facility. So the parking analysis was done to give us some sort of baseline. Traffic analysis, a couple things to mention. Rahway Avenue is the only what is known as a town collector road. Rahway Avenue is designed to actually carry large amounts of traffic to various other roadways in town, roadway networks. So it is already designed to carry a large amount of traffic, and we know that there's the amount of traffic that is there. Back many years ago, there was a traffic, what we call a traffic calming program that was put in on Rahway Avenue, which includes bump outs of various areas, which still exist today, speed tables where you have raised intersections with colorized pavement or colorized concrete, which is done, so that needs to be revisited. So the plan is that once the field is finally designed, we know what can go there and what the next steps are. We'll revisit the parking needs, and of course that's being dictated a lot by the scheduling that we do for the facility. And number two, we'll look at any traffic needs, which is an ongoing process on Rahway Avenue at all times. It'll be obviously much more focused once this project is designed. We know what's going to happen there. But we already have a lot of measures already on the street. We have the flashing lights, which were put up there only a few years ago for people crossing to Keller Stadium and back and forth. We have bump outs on the street that have been there for almost 2 decades. And so we'll definitely revisit it at the proper time. But right now, waiting to see what the final design is going to be, because it could be different than what we've been planning so far.
Got it, thank you. And I think the last one was Mr. Armento, I'm sorry, Dr. Armento, Republican candidate for Ward 2. Quite candidly, I didn't really hear any positive or constructive comments, so I'm not even sure how to respond to that. I'll just leave it at that. With that, I close this portion of the meeting. We're gonna move to bills and claims. Councilwoman Hapgood.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move bills and claims in the amount of $405,023.49.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Contract. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried. Next on the agenda is reports of standing committees, beginning with the Finance Policy Committee. Councilman Hapgood.
Thank you again, Mayor. I have 5 resolutions which I'd like to move as a package. The first, a resolution authorizing the CFO to draw a warrant for dog licenses for April 2023. The second, a resolution authorizing the CFO to refund Recreation Department fees. Third, a resolution authorizing the CFO to refund dumpster security payment. 4, a resolution authorizing the CFO to draw a warrant to refund the street opening cash bond. And 5, a resolution authorizing the CFO to draw warrants for overpaid taxes for 2023.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Root. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? This motion has carried.
I'd also like to move special ordinance number 2023-03 on first reading, a bond ordinance to authorize the undertaking of the Edison School Multipurpose Fields Project in, by, and for the town of Westfield in the County of Union, State of New Jersey, to appropriate the sum of $11,800,000 to pay the costs thereof, to make a down payment, to authorize the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation, and to provide for the issuance of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of such bonds.
May I have a second? Second. Second by Councilman Mackey. Any discussion?
Mayor, I'll be voting no. I guess it's no surprise, but looking at the Lembergs, it's been a pleasure getting to know them over the past, I think we first met along with Councilman Contract and Councilwoman Mackey, I think July 4th of 2021, right on the 4th of July.
On July 4th.
So thank you for all the environmental impact that you put into this and research you've done. And a lot of it for me personally comes down, I'm excited on one side to see fields, but honestly, I don't think this is the right location for a facility of this magnitude. I'm excited to hear there's plans to expand Tamacus Park along Lambertsville Road, the 7 acres there. But at the end of the day, I think of the children that have to go to school during the construction of this project, the volume of cars for drop-off, and I don't, honestly, I just don't agree, being a councilman for a long time, that there's not going to be any traffic impact, especially with the addition of One Westfield Place. So, in the end, I just can't vote for this bond, and not to mention, in a little over a year, the price has gone up a third. I understand what Jim said, and inflation, but $3 million is a lot of money to go up within 1 year, so it's hard to justify that cost, and I understand it's an estimate, but so unfortunately, I'll have to be no on this.
Yeah, I guess I want to tell the public, kind of my thought process on this. The mayor sort of alluded to it, but let me give a little bit more background. So I think it's pretty clear I have not been in favor of this project, along with my counterpart, since its inception. And I've really done everything I possibly can to convince my colleagues to agree with me. And honestly, it hasn't worked, right? I think the residents have shared a lot of great feedback. I have as well. I've tried to become as much of an expert on this as possible. And I know my colleagues here have as well, and we just have a different point of view on it. And at the end of the day, as I approach this vote, there's two paths that sit in front of every one of us. Path A is to oppose and sort of be a little bit on the outside. And path B is to get something out of it that advances the town's interests, and I believe Ward 3's interests, and I believe ultimately starts to address some of the concerns that have been raised, does not come anywhere close to fully addressing them, but at least starts to. And that was, in my mind, the practical way to look at this. And maybe I'm too practical. I've been accused of that. But that's how I looked at it. Option A is oppose and really accomplish nothing, except maybe a moral victory that you're opposed and you've been consistent. And option B is to say, you know what, here's what I believe we need to do. And if you do this, and if we do this, then yes, I'll consider saying yes. That's really what I focused on recently, because I didn't see any value in option A anymore. Option A that ship has sailed, right? I tried, you guys tried, a lot of people tried, and we didn't get to the end point that we were looking for. So that's why I've decided to support this, because I do believe the commitments that the mayor announced will actually move the town forward in a very productive way. This project was going to happen. So now at least we have an absolute commitment that this town will develop and implement a grass fields plan, because grass fields have to go along with turf. It could never be one or the other. And of course, honestly, I'd prefer it to be more grass than turf, but it wasn't possible. And that's what democratic elected government's all about, right? There's 9 of us, there's 9 votes. You could shout louder than the next, but that doesn't actually give you an extra vote. There's one other thing the mayor didn't mention, but I have her assurance that I will be part of the group that looks at decisions related to this. So when I say, having a seat at the table, I feel like on the inside, as the Ward 3 council person, I can help steer decisions that better address the concerns that have been raised tonight, as well as the concerns that I've raised for the last however long. So I absolutely realize a lot of people are not going to agree with this, including on the Green Team, which I've supported for 6 years now. In fact, I'm sure the emails are already coming my way. But practically, as I said, I think option B is better for the town and better to represent the concerns of the constituents. It's not perfect by any means, but I do think it's the better of the 2 path forwards that I faced.
I'm gonna thank David for being tenacious partner. I think that we're all better when we bring our ideas, and even when we don't always agree, I think we get to a better result, and I know I'm happy that you're gonna have a seat at the table. And I just wanna say, as the Ward 4, one of the Ward 4 representatives, one of the things I'm most pleased about with this project is the degree of stormwater infrastructure that will only be possible during this project. So for me, I look at it in a slightly different way. I look at it as a stormwater management project, and we're getting a bonus. We're getting the fields out of it, but I see this as a really intrinsic benefit for the people that are suffering from flooding.
And I do want to thank everybody on this council and the many residents who have come here all the time. I agree with Councilman Mackey. It ultimately makes us all better, and I think we're ending at a really good outcome. And I do want to comment, I know Councilman LaGripa, you mentioned about the concern about the inconvenience to the kids and stuff, but I can tell you, having the Board of Ed represented and the principal Edison, they are very, very excited about this project. And they do not have those concerns. I mean, they know it's going to be a problem, but it's going to be a short-term problem. So, I mean, it would be very hard for us to move this forward without the enthusiastic support of not only the school administration, but in particular the Edison School leadership. So I just want to assure the public that, and they are definitely at the seat of the table, and they will be driving the timeline in terms of what makes the most sense for their students and families. So, so thank you all. It's been a long road. This is, of course, just the introduction. We have adoption in 2 weeks with a public hearing. And do you have something you want to add, Councilman Hapgood? Yeah.
Not a lot, Mayor, but I just wanted to say that it does seem a little bit backwards sometimes that we're passing a bond ordinance in advance of, spending the money, but that is the way the municipal process works. And I just want to assure you that all of us will be watching over this process to make sure that we're spending dollars wisely. And I think we're all very excited about the contractor who's coming in to do the project management and, help us through the rest of the process. They're very skilled and will, not only make sure that we achieve the stormwater management that we need to, but that will also look at all the alternative surfaces to make sure that we are, installing something that is as safe as it can possibly be. So, thank you.
So thank you. Okay, so with that, please call the roll.
Council members Hapgood,
Yes.
Parmalee,
Yes.
Agrippa,
No.
Katz,
Yes.
Mackey. Contract?
Yes.
Dardia,
Yes.
Root,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion is carried. Next is public safety. Councilman Root.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move a resolution to amend an award of contract with Flock Safety for ALPR equipment.
May I have a second? Second by Councilman Dardia. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? This motion has carried. Next is code review. Councilman Parmalee.
All right, to wrap it up, I'd like to move for a resolution to approve a children's amusement device license.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Root. Any discussion? All in favor? Yes. Opposed? This motion has carried. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved by Councilman Katz, seconded by Councilman Dardia. All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, and good night, everybody.